Thank you for listening to The Pain of the Claim, your source for prescription strength claim relief. And now, your hosts, Jeremy and Donna Lavelle.
Welcome to the Pain of the Claim podcast. We have Mario Rios from Claim Preparations Experts on with us. Mario and I go back a little bit. Say hi to the people, Mario.
Hello, people. Pleasure to be on here with you, Jeremy. Thanks for having me, man.
Mario, you and I have gone back and forth for about a year now. That's when we met. We met in one of Vince's classes, and I have always fancied myself as an estimator. It's what I tell people constantly. Well, my core competency is estimating. Clearly, my core competency is not shutting up because I like to talk a lot. And you know, it's funny. You write estimates for the entire industry. It's not just public adjusters. You do a lot of estimate writing for a bunch of different people. How did you get into this, Mario?
Yeah, it's weird how I've been doing this now for 15 years. So I've written an estimate or two in my day. I've got probably over 7,000 estimates under my belt. So wow. I've seen a thing or two when it comes to writing estimates. And I got into this. I was working for a public adjuster, writing their estimates and doing their in-house appraisal work. And that relationship turned into eventually me going on my own, starting my own company, servicing other public adjusters, servicing law firms. Those relationships led to general contractors, water restoration companies. And in the years of doing this, it also transitions to some of those contractors are actually vendors for the carrier. So we write carrier estimates for the GCs that are vendors for the carriers. We do stuff for State Farm, Allstate, Tower Hill, UPC, Wright Flood. So it's interesting. I get a glimpse behind the curtain, so to speak, and I get to see kind of what both sides are actively doing when putting together these estimates.
Well, I've got to assume that there is ridiculous behavior on both sides of the table.
There is, right? And it's not just on the estimating side that I get to see this, because I do also appraisal work and I do umpire work. And I get to see the, you know, you walk into a house sometimes and you're just looking at the estimate and you go see what the actual estimate is and what you're going to look at. And you go, oh, so everything isn't premium grade in the house, and everything isn't, you know, the most expensive line item you can find on Xactimate or Symbility, which we also write on. So it's just, I think I've always been able to pick up clients because I try to tell my clients, hey, let's write something that makes sense. Let's write something that you can justify. And let's write something, the way that I look at when I write an estimate, I look at it in two ways. What's the ultimate goal with my estimate in terms of the damages that are there? And if this gets denied and I'm going to get deposed in a year or two, can I back up? Can I justify what I put to paper? Like I just said, if you put everything as premium grade and you have a kitchen that's 30 years old, it just doesn't add up, right? And down the road, someone's going to call you to task on it. So I always try to write an estimate and come up with numbers and figures and justifications. Someone that we both know, Rico, likes to say, tell your story when you're putting together your presentation to the insurance company. And part of that story is the estimate. So if you write a ridiculous estimate, your story is going to sound a little ridiculous. You're going to want it to make sense. And, we all know, right? Like the carrier's estimates are usually really low. The PA always wants to write a really high estimate, right? And then everybody tries to meet in the middle somewhere, find common ground. And that makes sense. But sometimes when you write the estimate so far into la land with your figures, it just makes it that much harder to come to a mutual meeting place.
Yeah,
by the way, I'm a big talker too, Jeremy. So you can
no, you're good. No, that's exactly. But that's the point. Therein lies the point, is that you have two perspectives. You have two perspectives, and you often have two really separate goals, right?
100%.
As opposed to the one particular goal, which is let's indemnify the insured. The one person here that is being affected by all of the posturing, all of the estimating, all of the arguing, all of the negotiating, all of the back and forth that we like to sit around in groups and congratulate ourselves on. You know,
Well, I think one of the other things that I know down here, for example, and I'm sure you have to do it as well, is, we have to sign the sworn proof of losses. The insureds are liable for attesting to the insurance company that they agree that these are the damages to their home that they are claiming. And then I told my clients all the time, when you write an estimate for $180,000 and then you settle that claim for 50, isn't your client going to ask you, why didn't I get that other $130,000 you were claiming? Right? So I always look at it as, when your client goes to look at these things, you're setting expectations to a certain degree as well. And now the client thinks, I've got this enormous problem in my home potentially, or, the task of rebuilding my home is going to be so expensive. What am I going to do? And you've kind of set those expectations in line because of the number that you wrote. So when you do settle the claim, if you're not, I always take pride, and I think that when an estimate of mine is written, I think you can conservatively, blink of an eye, get 80% of my number, and the carrier is not going to fight you on. You can argue over that other 20% to try to get to the exact number. We all know you're never going to get everything you ask for, but I know I can settle my estimates on 80% valuation any day because my numbers make sense.
Well, that's what we seek to do. I mean, even that's one of the things that we're looking at, that we're constantly trying to settle it somewhere in that 80% range. And so I have always said this, Mario, anybody can write a big estimate.
Yep.
Anybody can write a big estimate. It takes a craft to be able to write an estimate that communicates the actual damage. Now,
that
I'll
will
tell
be approved.
you what'd you say?
And that gets approved.
And it gets approved. Well, now sometimes they don't approve rightful estimates.
Sure.
You know what
I mean,
that's
like I said, I've been doing this 15 years, and in my 15 years, I've had 2 of my estimates copied line item by line item, and the carrier just took my estimate, put it on their letterhead, and paid it. The PA goes, what else can we ask for? And I go, what do you mean? You got everything you wanted.
Nobody expected to walk into the Shark Tank and get the deal they were asking for,
Yeah,
right?
I'm like, you literally got 100% of our number, and you were good with the number before we sent it. Like we collaborated on this to make sure we addressed all of the damages that we thought were possible. And we were good with the number. Now, because they paid you 100%, you want to try to figure out where can we get more?
Well, the funny thing is that I tell people all the time, because I was an IA at first, right. And that's where I broke my teeth in the claims arena. And I tell people all the time, I write the same estimate that I've always written. My attitude to the homeowner is the same as it's always been. I used to tell people all the time, you don't need a PA. You've got me. All you have to do is, if it's something that I'm missing, let me know, and I'll certainly get it in there. And if it's something that's warranted, I'll write for it. And God's honest truth, that's exactly how I felt. And it's exactly what I would have done. Now, that being said, I was subject to the training that I had been given.
Sure.
And as I have gone throughout my career, I have learned some things, and I have learned some things that we were taught to leave off of an estimate, to not look at this sort of thing. I'm going to give you just a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Felt. Now in Florida, I believe 30-pound felt is the code, or at least it's Correct. Local in a lot of counties. I know Correct. I've worked in Bay, and I've worked in Broward, and I have worked where's Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, Broward.
Yeah. Okay. So I've worked Fort Lauderdale, Miami. I've worked like in Kissimmee. I've worked Orlando. I've worked all over Florida, Tampa, and most of them have that 30-pound felt, for lack of a better term, rule. You Correct. Put 30-pound felt on it. But in Texas, we don't have that. We have 15, right? We have 15-pound felt. Well, the 30-pound felt rule in Florida makes a ton of sense, because y'all barely have roofs that are pitched over 212. Y'all
Yep.
have so many low pitch, and I'm not talking flat roofs. I am talking shingled
No.
roofs.
Yeah, I hear you. Listen,
You-
I've been on I don't know how many roofs in my time, and the further north I drive, the steeper they become. And believe you me, I don't like climbing steep roofs.
I don't either. I don't climb steep roofs anymore. I mean, it's out of, but in Texas, it's still 15-pound felt. And to the carrier's defense, yes, that's what's there. But when you get to some of these Texas roofs where it is common to find an entire neighborhood north of a 10-12 pitch. And the idea, what roofers will tell you is you can't use 15-pound felt. You have to use 30, or you have to use synthetic, because when you're standing on the roof at that pitch, the felt paper tears. And
Wow.
so from a practical standpoint, 15-pound felt doesn't work. And the only way that we can install anything, but the practicality of things seems to get lost when you're trying to communicate that to an insurance carrier.
All the time. So one of the big things that, when we write the carrier estimates, they don't want us to pay for baseboards. It's, they want you to detach and reset the baseboards and then put back those same baseboards, because baseboards aren't nailed in or glued in, right? They're just going to easily come right off. We can put them on the side.
You're snapped in.
Easily be able
Haven't
to
you heard?
reinstall them, right? So we always push back. No problem. You're not going to allow us to replace the baseboards. If we have to detach and reset the baseboards, then we also then need to be paid to categorize them, label them, store them in an offsite premise to make sure that they stay protected and not damaged during the course of the construction work, so that we can then bring them back to reinstall them in the proper form and order in which they were removed.
Then you've
And in
got to
order for
remove
us-
glue. You've got to remove
Right.
nails.
In order for us to do all of this, it's going to require 48 hours of manpower combined to be able to do all of this.
And you
But
have
I
to
think
label
it's
it. You have to label it north wall of master bedroom.
Yeah, I'm like, let's think about this in practicality, people. What you want me to do to save maybe $1 something a linear foot, I'm gonna charge the daylights out of you on the other end if you're gonna make me do all that work. I'm not doing that for free.
Mhm.
Right.
So whenever we put that back onto the carrier that way as general labor hours, we're gonna have to do X, Y, and Z. And these labor hours are being included because you're asking us to detach and reset baseboards. Usually they come back and go, just pay them baseboards.
Yeah.
For the
We have to
baseboard.
catalog, inventory, store in
Right.
a cool, dry place.
Right. You know what I mean? It's some of the decisions that they make at times. And I think, Jeremy, what you said a couple minutes ago is that if every IA took the approach that they were there for the homeowner and that it's not a battle. And I think that's I'm of the kind, and I think I'm lucky because I just deal with appraisal and umpire stuff. Mainly, I don't deal with daily claims. I think that I get to be at the point where we're both trying to get there, usually to find a common ground. And usually I like to say settle it so we can move on to the next one that's on our desk, so to speak. But most of the relationships that I have in the appraisal and umpire side of this world tend to not be as combative. And I know that a lot of PAs with the IAs and with the carrier on the initial stuff, it's just such an adverse relationship. And it really, like you said, it feels like grandstanding on both sides. And the guy that's stuck in the middle is the homeowner, who's the one that had the problem in their home.
Mhm.
You know, I just recently, 2 weeks ago, I was in court. I had to testify for a file that the carrier denied. Simply, they denied it because the policy had only been in place 32 days. And then they said, well, it must have been old damage because there's no way that the roof leaked. And it was two young homeowners. They had just bought their home. It was a file that ended up in litigation. I was brought in to write the estimate. The opposing insurance attorneys asked me, he goes, oh, so, you know, anybody can just write an estimate. And my response to him, I said, you can walk into a home right now and tell me what it's going to cost to fix everything. I said, no, you can't. Everybody can't just write an estimate. Well, there's good estimators and there's bad estimators. But feel free to go through my estimate and tell me what doesn't make sense. Well, ultimately, the jury came back and issued my exact dollar figure on my estimate to the homeowner.
Right.
So, you know, take pride in what you're doing. And I think you need to learn how to write them to kind of bump your head a little bit so that down the road, when you grow, like everybody wants to do with their businesses, you can potentially delegate it to an estimating company or have an estimator on in-house that does stuff for you. oftentimes I get called by, new PAs like, hey, can you write my estimates? And I'm like, I can. I go, but you kind of need to start, do them here or there yourself as well, because otherwise you're not going to know what I'm putting to paper. You're just going to get something and go and negotiate it based off of my figures. Like, you got to learn Xactimates, Ability, whatever software it is you want to use, learn it, figure it out, write some good estimates, write some bad estimates. When I first started doing this, I'll be honest, the first way that I started to learn to write estimates is what was the carrier's approval, right? What were the ultimate awards on these estimates that were the final decisions? What were they putting on these estimates that was being approved, right?
Sure.
Because if there's a kitchen claim is a kitchen claim. At the end of the day, what you have are differences in dimensions and valuation of pricing, right? But if you learn what the carrier approves on these kitchen estimates, well, you can start to build your own model for how I'm going to write the kitchen estimates. And that's the first step you have to take, is learning what you want, but also learning what gets approved. So.
Well, I mean, you say a kitchen estimate is a kitchen estimate, and at a level, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's also the most expensive room in the house to have something go wrong.
Sure.
I mean, when somebody tells me they have a kitchen claim, I sort of like take a step back, take a couple of really deep breaths, and realize that I am going to have a very involved, heavy laden line item. I mean, it's going to be heavy laden with line items, because you've got to look at every place where they use quarter round. And then there's usually a flooring difference of some kind. What kind of subfloor is there? Is it slab? Is it floating? Is it, I mean, what is it? What's going on there? There's just a lot that goes on with the kitchen estimate, but that's really neither here nor there. I mean, you can have a guy come in and that's been doing it for 40 years and go, yeah, I can fix this kitchen for $40,000.
Sure.
But the guys that do that, the guys that have done that in the past, what are they doing today, Mario? What are they doing today when, you go, I'm going to do this for $40,000, and then a week goes by and cabinets are 14 weeks out and 3 times higher than they were when you quoted that price?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's part of the problem, right? And I tell people all the time, remember, this is an estimate. It's not an exact, right? So if you wanted it to be an exact, what's going to happen? It's the cost incurred. You're going to spend the money, and then you're going to hope to get reimbursed by the carrier for it. So you always do want to take into account, pricing on things, delays, turnaround time, overall project length. If you're putting in supervisory hours and things of that nature, which should be, I think, in every estimate, should have some type of supervisory hours between not only the general contractor, but sometimes you need them just for the purposes of permitting, or if there's a permit runner, or if you have an owner's rep. That's one of the things that the buildings department down here actually recommend homeowners to do. A lot of times we'll get pushback because they're like, well, we don't pay for project supervision. The contractor should be supervising himself. That's the carrier's response always for project supervision. And I always try to tell my PAs, and we'll go back and combat it with this. The homeowner is going to hire an owner rep, and the supervision hours that are on this estimate are not the contractor supervising himself. It's the owner rep that's going to be coordinating between the owner and the general contractor. It's going to do the work, and it's actually even recommended by the building building department.
Here's my question. This is just my simple question. When it comes to supervision, if somebody in a construction site happens to get injured, whether it's a nail through the foot, a bruised thumb with a hammer, which I know never happens on a construction site because everybody follows every OSHA guideline to the letter, and no one ever gets hurt. In fact, workers' comp is a scam. So my question is in the theoretical world that somebody does get hurt, who do you report that to?
Your supervisor, isn't that the right word? Right?
Well, I mean,
we all
aren't
have a
you supposed?
supervisor?
And who is going to process the issue insofar as that injury goes? Now, I'm not saying that the injury is a part of the claim. What I'm saying is that workman that is happening right there. Are they supposed to report it to the homeowner? Is the homeowner now liable because during the processes of repair, is that homeowner opening up their liability for the repairs? Is that what you're saying should be done?
And it's you got to just apply common sense, right? Like we were saying, a kitchen alone is going to have coordinating of the project's going to need supervision between the electrician, the plumber, the cabinet maker, the granite countertop guy. You know, all that kind of stuff requires supervisory hours. It's not just, well, come and do the work. You're getting paid to do the work. Yeah, but I'm also getting paid to coordinate all these other trades that are a part of this job, which I should be entitled to my compensation for.
And I want to take a page out of the Donna playbook here. It's like, here's the reality. Here's the this is the reality is some of, and dare I say, most of our most skilled workers, their first language isn't English.
True. Listen, I'm the son of a plumber. Okay. My dad got here, never spoke much English, worked as a plumber, probably almost until the day he died, to be honest with you. And yeah, there was times that, you know, he had a hard time coordinating with the supervisor on the site because that guy only spoke English. Now, being in Miami, you know, it was less prevalent, right? Because everybody down here spoke Spanish. But still, I know what you mean. There's different languages that sometimes require additional time on a job site. It's just,
yeah, we've got a pretty significant landmass to the south of Texas that speaks a lot of Spanish too.
I'm aware. I came through that. I came through that landmass.
So I mean,
I'm Cuban, but I actually came in through Mexico.
from time to time, we get some Spanish speakers over here too, and then we also get some Russian speakers, and we also get. I mean, there's a lot, and it's not just the Hispanic culture that I'm speaking to. I mean, right. I knew a tile guy that didn't speak a word of English, but would beat you in every chess game he ever played, and he was as Russian as he could be. But I didn't speak English though. But when it came time, he knew what kind of tile went where, and the tile was absolutely gorgeous. His name was Yuri, and that's the only English word he knew was Yuri, and he would turn around. So
most people have family members that can help them. That's what the adjuster told you. Most people just have.
True.
That's what they told you. Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. Next time there's got to be a deposition, I'll just have the family member help.
I'll have the family
member. With my translating, since that's, you know, so easy for you to dismiss that there might be need for something like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, it just makes it so difficult sometimes to find common ground on these things, because just the approach on them on the other side, so to speak, on the carrier side, sometimes doesn't make sense. You know, and I tell people, is that what you would want done at your house? There's an insurance company here one time that we were in appraisal, and it's one of these where it's a vendor program, and the homeowner gets a discount on their policy. But when they have a claim, they have to agree to let the carrier do the work. Yeah, it's not very, but I wouldn't have it on my house. But yeah, so they don't pay the homeowner. The carrier pays directly to the contractor, whoever it is that's going to do the work. The homeowner doesn't see a dime. But we're sitting there arguing, and the guy goes to me, well, yeah, the drywall is wet, but we could just paint over that with some stain blocker. And I said, is that what you would do at your house? Like, I get if I'm asking you to replace the entire seam. I'm telling you, we're going to replace 32 square feet of drywall. And you're telling me you think that's excessive?
Right.
You know, and I just looked at the guy and I said, listen, do whatever you want to do, just do what you need to do here today, because we're obviously coming back with an arbitrator, with the umpire, because if that's how you approach just the drywall, we're never going to find common ground on the claim. So do whatever you need to do with your inspection, go through whatever farce steps you want to do today, and then when you're ready, we'll come back with the arbitrator and we'll do what makes sense. Because if you don't even want to replace wet drywall, you just want to, you know, stain blocker it, we're never going to see eye to eye.
Right. Yeah. If that's the direction that you're headed. Yeah. We're just not.
Yeah.
And look, I've always kind of, we often, when we talk about negotiating, whether it's in appraisal or even if it's at the supplement level or the PA desk adjuster level, I mean, we use the expression splitting the baby. And I want to be really clear. There's no justice in a split baby. There's just an injured baby. That's it. That's all you're getting there. And it's generally not functional to either side. So,
and like I said, I think when we're doing these estimates for whatever the ultimate goal down the road is, whether it's litigation or what have you, the first thing I always tell people is make sure you document it, right? So I got great PAs that send me stuff that I can write their estimates, and I don't have a single question for them. They're giving me their picture files. They're providing me the sketch that they did on site. I mean, we're doing data entry and turning it around for them usually in a day, you know?
Sure.
And then there's guys that send me files and I'm going, what's damaged?
Yeah, I was one
Or-
of those guys.
No. I mean, I've got, there's just like, on a roof one, it's not a big deal, right? You're asking me to replace the roof. Cool, I can take care of it. But you're sending me an estimate, you're telling me the kitchen's damaged or the floors are damaged or this is damaged. And then I've gotten guys that have sent me a sketch with no measurements. And I said, what am I supposed to do with this? Am I?
You said you were good.
He's like, I can't go back to the house. The client's super, you know, I'm like,
Can
how
you
big
not
is the
just get
file?
what you need from the pictures? That's my favorite one.
Yeah, so I'll get that. And honestly, you know what? I was able to come up with dimensions because I saw that the tiles were 12 by 12.
Right.
And I ballpark counted tiles per room to come up with an overall. All right, this room's
Probably
gotta
because
be.
most of the tiles were like, most of the pictures were of his shoe, so you could kind of
Yeah.
tell how big they were.
Oh, God, yeah, I get.
Oh, look, I data
Oh.
mine all the time in my estimates, Mark. You've got to do that. That's if you're gonna be an estimator, you've got to know how wide cabinet doors are.
Yeah.
You've got to know how big tiles are because they will save your life. Like I know how long a brick is.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. It's simple things like that. When you get a file and the PA go, I can't go back there, or yeah, I have no idea, and I need it tomorrow. Can you kind of just figure it out for me? You know, it's like, and listen, I will bend over backwards for anybody, but there's a lot of times you go, dude, you're sending me your, you know, the worst thing you've got, and you're asking me if I can get it to you by tomorrow. It's like,
Well, which kind of brings me to my next point. There's a platform that's out there that has gotten a ton of bad reviews on the contractor side, tons and tons and tons of bad reviews. And that platform is Symbility. Now, before I leave it at tons of bad reviews on the carrier side, I use Symbility. I personally like Symbility. There's a lot of things I like about how Symbility works. I like the way that it estimates. Now, in my opinion, it's not as fast as Xactimate as far as being able to crank out a roof estimate. It's a little bit slower in that, and it's got some different estimating methodology that's applied to it. I mean, but what has been your experience with Symbility, and kind of what do you see the differences being? And I asked this question kind of already having an answer myself, but I'm really curious to kind of see what you have to say.
yeah, I mean, I like the functionality of Symbility in terms of it's a software that's easy to sketch on. It's a software that's easy to, you know, do your data input, upload certain things. One of the things that I dislike about Symbility immensely is the uploading of pictures. So I don't know if you
Okay.
ever ran across this. If you use Symbility on multiple computers and you uploaded your pictures on your desktop at the office, and then let's say you went home and wanted to finish doing that estimate because you didn't have time at the office, those pictures, when you open it on your home computer, are no longer uploaded there. You have to manually go back into it and re-upload the pictures.
I have
I don't know if you
never
ever experienced that.
I have not. I don't usually use it on two different devices though. So I mean,
yeah, because sometimes I'm at the office, sometimes I'm at home. And if I start an estimate at the office and then I need to finish it at home, you have to go back into the pictures and re-download.
oh, you have to read down because they're in the cloud. You've got to bring them from the cloud back
Yeah.
into that local device.
Whereas Xactimate doesn't do that. Once they're in the Xactimate file, they're there.
Yeah,
You don't have to touch them again. You can open up that file anywhere and your pictures are there.
sure.
That, to me, that was one of the things that I disliked about Symbility. And that's not even on the estimating side. That's just on the functionality of it. It drove me
Right.
crazy. If I started something and then I couldn't finish it because I had to, there'd be days that I'd start it here at the office, go home, finish the estimate, but I wouldn't send it to my clients until the next day when I got back to my office because I didn't want to have to deal with the pictures.
Right. Well,
If you got 300 pictures, it's a pain.
oh, well, yeah. And if you don't have 300 pictures, you should.
Right. Well,
Let,
yeah.
let,
I mean,
let me say that. If
I
you-
think the least amount of pictures I've ever taken at a house is maybe like 80 to 100. And it was just because I was doing a small house with like a bathroom and one bedroom. Like I tell people all the time, take as many pictures as possible, take it from different angles, different heights, flash, no flash. I mean, like, overtake pictures, because they're gonna, well, I don't see the damage on this picture. Well, how about this one now? Or how about this one? But back to the functionality of stability. I think the biggest difference is I can write an estimate on stability, and I can write that same estimate on Xactimate and have a $10,000 difference with no real changes. I think part of the problem that I find with stability is stability, you almost have to go and find items that you can try to include to increase the numbers on an estimate. Whereas Xactimate, to me, it's more seamless. If I put in tile on Xactimate is giving me, you know, a different calculation of the labor cost, material cost, and stability. Just the way we always call it, it's vendor pricing is what I always say stability has. I think their price points are dramatically low on stability. And like I said, I can put in a ceramic tile on stability and put that same ceramic tile and have a $3 or $4 price difference in the software.
Well,
so
my question, have you found this? Because this is what I found. Now, I want you to know that I worked multiple storms with the Symbility platform. Okay. I worked a blizzard. I worked a blizzard up in, it was a Winter Storm Nemo is what we worked. And then Texas had a ton of hailstorms in 2016. And I wrote a good amount in that. Lafayette had some floods in 2016, 2017. I wrote Symbility there. But basically I went over to Xactimate kind of when I got away from the carrier, you know, just by nature of my career, I got further from the carrier. So I wasn't using it as much. Xactimate is the most widely accepted platform. Even carriers who use Symbility will accept an Xactimate. And what I found is and I actually did a video on this. It's Symbility versus Xactimate. What I found is that the labor actions, and this is the labor actions that are included in Xactimate are often not included in Symbility. For example, you're talking about like tile. Well, you will look up in Xactimate and it'll include the labor to remove and replace it. It'll have the tile itself. It'll have the grout. It'll have the thin set. It'll have all of those things that are included in the line item. And you go look at Symbility and it's just ceramic tile.
That's right. Right.
That's
so
it.
That's why I said you got to kind of go and find the items that include, right? Symbility makes it more intensive. You can't just write tile. Well, then you got to go and find all the other little items that are not included on there. And I think the carrier kind of likes that way because they can just, well, we paid you for your floors. Look, it says tile on the estimate. Right. So I that's why I always say it's a vendor program. And I'm not a huge fan of it because of that.
I agree with you there. I don't like having to write the extra line items. Quite personally, I don't like that.
You're making me do extra work so that you can maybe sneak one by when you know it's stuff that's part of this task that should be included. Like you said, you said you did a bunch of roofs. On the roofs as well, it's the same thing. You have to go in and add all these additional individual line items to be able to write the same kind of estimate you would on Xactimate.
Yeah, if I'm going to write an estimate to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I damn sure not better have to write a line item to take the lid off the jar. And that's the way Symbility is that you have to write the line item to take the lid off the jar.
That is a perfect analogy and absolutely right. Yeah, you have to write the line item to take the lid off the jar with Symbility. And that's perfect.
You know what I mean? And you got to write the line item to open the drawer to get the knife. You've got to write the line item. That's the way Symbility, and and what they call that is called component estimating. And to some degree, Xactimate is that way too. Okay. So you've heard lump sum estimating. What carriers like is component estimating. They want to see the components that build up to what that cost is. And all your lump sum gurus out there will still tell you to write your components, just don't put prices by them.
Well, and here's what's funny, right? So part of the reason I started doing this, and I think I service close to 20 law firms and like 25 public adjusters. And one of the reasons we kept getting businesses, and I said, the GC will come in and give this estimate, $3,000 paint. What are you painting? $3,000. The carrier goes, well, what's the $3,000 for? And the GC was like, for paint. The carrier goes, yeah, but are you painting the walls? Are you painting the trims? Are you painting the ceilings? And I say, the exact estimates let the carrier at least know when you go to compare stuff, you're comparing apples to apples. There's a lot of times when they get these GC bids for the work, the GC is not worried about line itemizing it. The GC is going to tell you, I'm going to charge you $3,000 to paint. I'm going to paint whatever I need to paint, and I'm going to do it all for $3,000.
Right.
The carrier doesn't want to accept that. So part of the reason that I was valuable, so to speak, is that you're going to turn something back into the insurance company that when you go to sit down to evaluate it, you can compare apples to apples.
Sure. That's the idea, right? That's the idea. And that's one of the things that I tell my client when I sit down with them. It's like, look, insurance carriers, for lack of a better term, speak a very specific language. And often it sounds like gibberish. It sounds like pig Latin. It sounds like it's something that made up. They'll use words you've heard before, but they don't mean what they used to mean anymore. And so you have to understand exactly how to speak their language. And if you use a dirty word, they'll deny your entire claim. You know, my toilet overflowed and my house is flooded. I'm sorry, man. We don't cover flood.
Yep.
I'm sorry, man. Flood's not covered.
But I meant, you said flood.
Even more days now, these policies are becoming more and more tricky, more and more restrictive, more and more sublimits. Some of these policies now are even calling that you have to present an RCV ACV estimate. And if you don't present an RCV ACV estimate, it precludes you from being able to proceed with litigation because you didn't proceed with providing them an actual dispute in the valuation.
That falls into the proof of loss documentation that has to be on there. Most policies in Texas right now are only requiring depreciation on personal property. Okay. But the way the policy is written, that's little p, personal property. Okay. And so, you know, if it's little p, the drywall that's hanging in my house is my personal property. And so, I mean, if you want to get down to the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law, or the letter of the policy rather than the spirit of the policy, that's why we provide depreciated estimates. One, I want to control the narrative on the depreciation. That's number one, because carriers most often will use age when it benefits them, and they'll use condition when it benefits them.
Sure. Yeah. And I just did one for a law firm not too long ago. I wasn't involved in it at all. It's a firm that sends me a bunch of business. It was something that was being negotiated between the attorneys. The carrier ultimately paid on it. The PA wrote a decent estimate, but they get the settlement check, and I think the carrier applied 50% depreciation across the board. Attorney calls me and says, that seems off. I said, well, yeah, it's an arbitrary number, first of all. Second of all, send me a copy of the estimate. I look at the estimate, immediately I call them, I said, go back to the carrier, so we want full replacement cost on everything, because they wrote depreciation on labor. You can't depreciate,
labor.
It's not a material. So half of the estimate, they applied depreciation in property just so that they wouldn't have to pay out the figures.
Well, in Florida, you can't depreciate labor. In Texas and Oklahoma, you can. And so, so anybody listen to this, check your state laws. Anything that Mario and Donna and I are talking about, check your state laws. I mean, it is so crucial that you go in and know what is allowed. And it doesn't take a whole lot. It's a Google search. Can you depreciate labor in Texas? And it will tell you, yes, you can. In fact, most of the time when I Google stuff like that, it'll give me case law where it was decided. So please, check your state laws and do not take the opinions of this podcast as it applies to stuff in Chicago or Canada or wherever in the world you may be listening to this. Yes, in Florida, you cannot depreciate labor. I don't know how you depreciate something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me how it's allowed over there. But that's one of the things that I tell people all the time too, right? When I first started doing this, one of the things that I did, I would go to the building departments and I'd sign up for like their free seminars. And I think the best thing you can do is, how am I supposed to build this back, right? If you want to learn how to write estimates related to damages, but wouldn't you want to figure out how they're supposed to actually get, how things are installed? What's the proper procedure for drywall or roofing or whatever it is, right? And a lot of the building departments host free seminars. and you can go and sit and learn. And
You'd
that's
think
one of the-
carriers would send their people there, but no.
Well,
no.
I mean, you
No.
could.
Listen, I learned to write stability over a 24-hour period where I met with one of the people from Alacrity. They taught me how to use stability in like 2 hours. I said, here you go. All right, start writing estimates. What do you mean? What? Huh? And I've been writing on it now. I've been writing on it now for 6 years, but that's how I learned. It was like, here you go. We need estimates on this.
Right now, the extent that I use Symbility for is to check the details in their line items. That is the primary thing that I use Symbility for right now. For those of you who don't know, Symbility is absolutely free to download. And generally, if and they'll let you work under like a sample training list. So you can't download current price lists for anything, but you can work under a training, and all of the information within that is all of the details that are within those line items. You can pull those there, and that's absolutely free. And you can download the actual software. Is not called Symbility. It's called Mobile Claims.
Right,
And so
claims.
that's what you'll have to search is Symbility Mobile Claims, and you can download that and start comparing. And as I always say, the devil's in the details. So start comparing those details and make sure you're comparing apples to apples, and understand those are the differences.
And we're seasoned guys. We've been doing this for a while, but I got a file the other day where I was the umpire. The PA's estimate was line items for rooms, no sketch, no dimensions. And I looked at it and I was like, you did the bare minimum. Put together something here. And I don't know, just take pride in what you put in your estimates, man. Learn how to sketch. I think it helps you build relationships. I say it all the time when I'm giving our classes. The first thing I tell people is learn to sketch. It's not complicated. You don't have to be perfect at it. And at the end of the day, once you start to build rapport with the guy on the other side, I share my ESX files with people all the time. It's funny because I'll have appraisers or umpires that see my estimates on a file and call me, hey, can you send me the ESX on this? And I'm like, they're like, what? I didn't even know where it was, but I wrote an estimate for some PA, or I wrote an estimate for some law firm. And 6 months down the road, the appraiser or the umpire are going, Mario, send it to me so I don't have to take any measurements because I know what you do is right. So I can get in and out of this house in 5 minutes. I'm just going to take a couple pictures to show that I was here. Can you send me your ESX file so I don't have to measure anything?
Right. Well, look, I do that too, man. I'm not above it. I mean, when you say sketch, learn how to sketch, do you mean like freehand sketch, or do you mean sketch in the program?
I personally like to do it freehand, and then I like to sketch at my office.
That's what I do. Let me insert this real quick, Mario. I use a program called Good Notes. It's I think it's like $10. You can download it. May be 15 now, but you can download it on the App Store. Unfortunately, it is not on the Google Play Store as far as I know, but I use this program that's on the Apple App Store. It's called Good Notes, and it's basically just a journal app, and I use the Apple Pencil, but you can get grid paper on there, and then it's got a shape designer. So if you draw a line that's all squiggly and crooked, it will straighten it out for you. And so I use that, and it's got
that's only problematic when you're starting to deal with curved walls.
Yeah.
Well, it'll do circles too, believe it or not.
It'll do circles.
I've actually drawn the interior rooms of turrets. You just
I
go
had
in
to
and
do
you draw the circle, and then you erase out the portion of the circle that's missing or whatever. I've done that too, man. I'm telling you, I love that program, because then you can get this. Then it's got a text box that comes up that you can move this text box around and take your scope notes, where you can write a normal size, but it prints it really, really small. And I may throw up an example or something like that of the scope notes that I take and the drawings that I do. But learning how to draw in the field and sketch it, I use just what are those? Do you remember those things back in the day that a bunch of people use? I'm trying to remember what they're called. They're little grooved things that you put on your clipboard that help you draw straight lines. I cannot remember what the name. I want to say it's called a tech line, but it's not a tech line. It's
that's not it. I'm trying to remember the name. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and
I use that. That's what I use to scope stuff with.
And it wasn't a ruler. Well, like I started drawing on a piece of paper when I first started doing it, right? Like I didn't even have the grid paper. I just did it on regular paper to practice, right?
Did you ever have that loss that you showed up on and you kept running to the edge of the paper, or you drew the room too big? I mean, I learned that.
Of course.
And you have to draw the little arrow to indicate turn the paper over.
It was one of my.
I have a 5-year-old daughter, right? And I talk to her now when she's writing. I'm like, honey, you're gonna run out of room. You're writing too big. You gotta judge the size of the paper. Because it reminds me of when I would start doing these things, and I'd draw a house, and I'd be like, oh man, now you're drawing the house on the backside of the paper. It's not big enough, and you're not gonna erase everything you just did.
The device I was talking about is called an AccuLine, is what it's called. It's called an AccuLine. And I tell everybody, when you get ready to start drawing a house, find an extreme corner, and that's where you start. And that's the corner on the paper that you start at. And that's how you draw, and that's how you draw it out. Now, it doesn't need to be the scale, just your measurements need to be right. And I learned that actually, I digress a moment. Where I learned to scope and do interior scopes is it was the very first time I ran into a public adjuster.
Okay.
And it was a freeze claim. It was an interior freeze claim, and the pipes had busted, and it was at a lake cabin, and it ran for a good long time. Well, the PAs want to put in new home runs, and he's wanting to do all of this kind of stuff that PAs do. He's like, all of these are site-built cabinets. It's made out of 1/8-inch plywood. But he's like, they're site-built custom cabinets. I said, well, they are site-built, and I get that they're custom in that nobody would ever mass produce this ever.
They came with an Allen wrench to put them all together.
No one would ever mass produce this. And so, yeah, I get that. But wanted to tear all of the processes, the repair process that the PA wanted to go for, but it snapped me into focus pretty quick that I got to the point where I was writing every line item down in my scope, and I would pre-estimate using Xactimate nomenclature for everything that I wanted to do. So it wasn't just a 2-foot drywall repair. It was R&R, DRY, 1/2, and then I would put, 4 square feet, R&R, INS, BT, 4 square feet. And then I would
a little bit more detail than what most folks are going to do, but I have gotten notes like that.
But I was leaving line items out. So I would write these line items down. Like, I couldn't for the life of me remember to put haul off in an estimate.
Okay.
I'll still write an estimate, Mario, and forget the pickup truck or the dump trailer. I'll still do that. I mean,
what's the number for that, or the code? I love it when he speaks Xactimate.
It's DMO,
yeah,
DMO, D-trailer.
I love it.
A couple of the estimating things that you'll see. I mean, just my little tips for estimating, especially you guys that are listening in Florida. So perk up and listen. There is a ton of aluminum wrapped fascia in Florida, especially on the beach. On the beach, there is because you have such high salt content in the air. I mean, it just eats through wood like nothing. And so they'll wrap the fascia in with metal. Well, there's a line item in Xactimate that is basically SFG and FAC. I think M468, you know what I mean? And they're going to give you about $3 or $4 a foot. When in fact, what it is it's custom wrapped aluminum that is PVC coated.
Right.
And that's $14 a foot. And
that's one of the things, right, that I see it all the time is, kind of just joking around. It's not everything has to be premium grade. But when you go to do tile, for example, Xactimate has like 16 classifications of tile, and that's not even getting into like the travertines and the marbles and all that kind of stuff. I'm just talking about your standard tile,
ceramic, porcelain tile. Yeah. Well,
ceramic, porcelain, or then there's the tile floor covering.
Yeah, tile floor covering.
So explain to me the difference between that's what we use for the older tiles. Okay, so you want me to replace the older tiles with the older tiles? Like, it's a ceramic tile. Like, why are we playing with the classifications so that you can try to save $1.50 a square foot? It's like, I don't know. I mean, and I see it all the time. People write standard grade on stuff. I'm like, when's the last time you saw an actual standard grade?
Well, most people don't realize standard grade is shitty. That's what that's the
Yeah,
actual
well,
word
'cause-
for standard.
yeah.
That's I
Well,
told you
it-
they spoke in a very specific language,
Yeah.
and you're gonna hear words you think you've heard before.
They pronounce shitty
Well,
wrong.
Standard
it started with an S.
Yeah.
It started with an
standard
S, right?
is estimator speak for shitty. And so I mean, and that's the reality. And knowing those kinds of things as an estimator is crucial. You know what I mean? And you won't know that until you get out there and write some estimates. And this is what I will tell you. And Mario, back me up here. Is if you get into something complicated, do your best to take all the documentation you can, get your sketches and take your pictures. And if it's like a fire or something you've never done, yes, absolutely. Get on the phone with Mario, get on the phone with me. You're going to have to pay us to do this.
Yeah,
We don't do this
and-
for
and
free.
Fires are complicated, man.
Fires are
I
super
think
complicated.
are, in my opinion, one of the harder estimates to write because there's so
There's
many
so
potential
much.
code upgrades and just so many things that come into play because of a fire. That and structural stuff. I mean, I just had one where I settled it as the appraiser, and I had also written the estimate for the attorney. The claim got kicked back down to me like a year later in appraisal. And our biggest issue that we were having down the road was it was a foundation issue. The carrier approved $54,000 in foundation work repair to stabilize the home. We agreed on all the scope of damages, but then he wanted law and ordinance to be zero. And I said, absolutely not. I go, when this guy submits all these plans to the city, if the city comes back and says, well, you got 3 windows that are being affected, I want you to change all of them now. And I want you to put all of them as impact. Why in God's good name would I agree to zero under law and ordinance? So, you know, it's amazing the things that you have to be careful when you're putting together these estimates for your ultimate negotiation, right? Because the estimate's just your tool so you can get to your number. And there's so many things, fire leaves so many things for HVAC, plumbing, electrical, that just, there's so many intricate little things that go into a fire. Not only what got damaged, but what will potentially be part of the rebuild because of the building departments.
Well, that gets, especially in a fire estimate, because because there's a lot of building codes and there's usually a percentage that's tacked onto it. Sometimes 30, 50, 60, 70, 80, right. Whatever.
Yeah, it varies from state to state.
And it'll vary from trade to trade.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like when you begin to upgrade, if you upgrade, like, for example, this is one that I know of. If you upgrade or update a building more than 50% in the state of Texas, then you have to bring it up to date for all of the ADA requirements. So if you've got a commercial building that was built in 1979, prior to the ADA being effectuated, then and you decide, it's like, oh, I'm gonna remodel my office and I'm gonna reconstruct some of this and I'm gonna make this look different. Before you do that, now you know, this is something that you've got to think about. You've got to have bars in the bathroom. You've got to have a wheelchair ramp outside. Yep. You've got to take all of those 2.6 doors that were really popular in the 70s and 80s. Get rid of those guys. Throw those guys in the trash. Oh, and by the way, the doorway where the old door used to hang, that one's no good either anymore. So you're going to have to completely reframe, reheader. All of that stuff comes into play when you're writing an estimate. Yes, this is hard. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, it requires a craft. Yes, it requires practice. Thank God we have experts like Mario that are available, that has dedicated what he does into helping those people along. I've called Mario in several cases and ask him, hey man, what do I do in this? And he's like, well, you got to this and that. And I can't think of a specific instance, but Mario and I'll kick the ball around a lot on estimatics quite a bit.
And that's part of it, right? Is being able to call somebody that you can talk it through with. I do that with you. I've done that with Vince. I do it with Carlos, some of the guys that we're all familiar with. And we'll call each other and, you know, hey, I got this going on this claim. I'm thinking this. If I write X, Y, and Z, actually just yesterday, one of the PAs called me and said, hey, the mold company came back out. They found some mold on one of these walls, and now the tile floor was also affected. I'm on the phone with them, and I said, did you double check the cabinets? He goes, what do you mean? I said, I'm pretty sure the cabinets sit on top of the tile. I go, if I got to do the tile, I think I'm going to have to DNR your cabinets. And he goes, how did you remember that? You were at the house 3 months ago. And I said, I can never remember the things my wife tells me we have going on the weekend, but I can remember the houses I went to and whether the floor, the cabinets
under
are
the
on top of
cabinets
the
or not.
floor.
Yeah.
I can't remember that we have dinner plans on Friday nights.
On
but I can
behalf of
remember-
your wife, we don't like that. Just so you know, we don't like that.
Yeah, but see, I'm much smarter. Okay, so I just have it put on our calendar. We have a family calendar, and she just books me whenever she needs me. So just, if you have something I need to attend, just put it on the calendar, and I'll deal with it then. But if you don't put it on there, I will forget.
Here's another pro tip: cozy calendar saves marriages. I'm just gonna tell you.
It is. I mean, listen, and with kids and their
Soccer
shows,
schedules and
So
yeah.
I've got to ask you. I've got to ask you, when you watch TV and you see like a scene where they're destroying shit in a house, does your brain just be like, I know exactly how much that costs? Because Jeremy will estimate while we're watching TV. And I'm like, can you please turn it off?
Okay, I was gonna say, Jeremy, you need to turn that off.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know how normal people will take pictures of their family and create memories? He won't take pictures because I think deep down he thinks he's going to have to label them at some point. So he's.
I overtake pictures. My wife's like, "How do you have that many?" So I have like 30,000 pictures on my cloud, and she's like, "How do you have so many pictures?" I'm like, "I take pictures all day long. Everywhere I go for work, it's just pictures because I'm blocking everything." So, we were kind of talking a little bit of like some of these trends, and I think we both use software sometimes that will take our measurements for us and give us those 3D renderings.
Absolutely.
And I think there's some people that lean on that initially and never craft the sketching / learning to scope.
Well, the bigger place where you see that happening is roofs. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a lot of level 3 Xactimate people out there. And I just want to say this, God bless all you level 3 Xactimate users. I don't have one single certification for Xactimate. I've never been certified whatsoever, but I will teach you how to use that piece of software. And I've learned level 3 basically means you know how to use a piece of software. It does not mean you're an estimator.
Nope.
It means
the Xactimating training. That's why people ask me, well, where can I go get trained? Should I go to? I said, well, Xactimate is going to teach you how to use their system, right? But that doesn't teach you how to estimate.
Right.
You learn to estimate by doing and by talking to the trades, talking to the contractors, figuring out what actually needs to happen at this loss. But I do like some of these new softwares. We've got one that we've started to use that will give us the 3D sketch of the property. I tell clients, if you do use stuff like that, you still need to actually go and take pictures of the damages.
Absolutely.
Because that 3D sketch, I've seen clients where they'll just give me that. There's nothing else to it. So, well, did you take pictures? No, I got a 3D sketch. Well, your 3D sketch one is great for certain things, but we've had this conversation. The carrier's not going to necessarily open your 3D sketch because they don't want to click on a link or something.
They're
of that
probably
nature.
not going to open your 3D sketch. No.
Right. So that 3D sketch is truthfully great because if you end up in litigation, the attorney sure as hell is going to use that 3D sketch and ram it down the carrier's throat and lit, but you still need to take pictures. But we've been using the 3D camera sketching, and we've got, one of the companies that will give us actually stuff back within 48 hours, Jeremy. And it's on some of our larger losses. We've gone in, used the camera, sketched out the entire property, takes maybe 20-30 minutes with their camera, and they're giving us back an entire 3-dimensional rendering with the sketch, everything back within 48 hours. It does make my life a little bit easier sometimes.
Wow.
Sure.
Because with Matterport, I know you've experienced it. Sometimes there's problems with the inlay, and sometimes people don't order the actual, they just get the 3D rendering, and they don't realize that they have to do additional stuff to get the ability to import it into Xactimate.
Right. Well, yeah. So I use the overlay is what I use, and then I sketch on. But sometimes there's a lot of interpretation. There's a ton of interpretation when you get ready to sketch an overlay. Okay. So, it's not going to do the heavy lifting for you. You've got to, you still have to know how to do it and know how to make it draw.
We switched to this iGuide that Carlos Machine talked me into. And man, I got to tell you, I don't know if I've sent you a copy of what they do, but their 3D rendering and sketch is fantastic.
I would love to see that. If you get a chance, please do send it to me. And we'll try to make it available for some of our listeners. Somehow, I don't really know how to do that because all I do is talk. But no, the tools out there, and I guess that's kind of the other thing that I want to get into is documentation. And I have this thing that I have said to people time and time again: the number one reason that claims go unpaid or underpaid is due to lack of or poor documentation. So whether you're a homeowner, you're a contractor, you're an independent adjuster, a public adjuster, if you're just a guy that's working scopes and you're out there, cataloging the damage, you may be a ladder now guy, Hancock guy. I don't really care where it is that you're running. Documentation is what tells the story. And you've got to have it. Now, I can tell now carriers don't appear to be really upset if you're lazy and you don't have a picture of something. It gets a little embarrassing when the other guy comes up with one and says, hey, I've got a picture of this. But the reason that they're going underpaid is because of poor documentation. And so if you're a homeowner, your pictures are going to be incredibly crucial. Now, there are ways to take pictures, and I'm going to save that for another podcast. But getting firsthand account as to what's going on is absolutely crucial in getting your claim paid. Furthermore, it's your responsibility.
Sure, and not even just for the damages, right? I think one of the things that I see is in all these softwares, you can price manipulate, right? Like,
yeah,
I can change the dollar figure on anything in Xactimate.
Sure.
And I see that happen sometimes when I'm doing peer review on things. I'll get an estimate. I'll look at hold on a second. That seems high. That's not the price point on it. And I'll go into peer review and estimate. And yeah, they left it as ceramic tile, but they actually put ceramic tile premium and then backed out the plus so that they could have the price point be higher. Right. And in some places, some states will actually call that fraud if you do that. So
sure,
you need to be careful when you just price point and price manipulate on Xactimate. And one of the things that I say is, I think Xactimate is great for some things, but some things I don't think their pricing is very good. For marble, for example, I think the pricing on Xactimate for marble is too low. And every time I've encountered marble floors that needed to be either buffed or polished or actually replaced, I will always document and my price increase. And that's one of the things that I tell people: documentation isn't just the pictures that you're taking, it's to support the other items that you're putting on there. So if I have that price point at $3 and I know that marble floor is actually a $15 line item, I justify it. Here's why I've changed this price point, and I'll put the F9 note on there into Xactimate. And here's the reason, and here's where I'm coming up with this pricing for this line item, so you can't call into question my estimate. And I say into question, and I don't mean necessarily the carrier or the inside examiner, or the adjuster. I'm talking about litigation. I always say, write my estimate like you're going to get deposed. And if I write something and I make a change, and some attorney wants to be an ass about it a year later, well, why did you make? Oh, here you go. There's the documentation. I provided it to you. Here's the vendor that tells me that specific flooring is going to cost me in a ballpark of $13 to $15 a square foot. I put it at 15 to err on the side of caution.
Sure.
There's nothing anybody can tell you.
Well, absolutely. And that's the point is while pictures are good, unbiased third-party source material is even better.
Yes, sir.
And any places where you can draw those down when it comes to crafting that estimate, what you want to have as much information as possible. You want to be able to go out and the biggest thing that I see in most estimating is it just boils down to one simple thing, and it's pure North American laziness. They don't want to look.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And they'll say, well, we were not permitted to perform a destructive investigation. Okay, that's fine. What about the part that wasn't destroyed that you didn't take a picture of? You know what I mean? Mario, you just wrote an estimate for me, I guess last week, and I'm going to leave the carrier out of it. But this particular one, and maybe you remember it, they broke out the slopes of the roof in different sections of the estimate. Do you recall this?
Remember it. They paid for 3 of the 4 slopes.
They paid for 3 of the 4 slopes, which is laughable in Florida, right?
Listen, I had an adjuster from Texas after one of the hurricanes come and said, well, you know, I'm going to pay you for about 40% of the roof, 50% of the roof. And I said, is this your first one in Florida? He goes, well, no, I've been down here for a couple months. I said, well, just so that you know, whenever you got 25% of the roof damage, you pay for the whole roof in Florida. He goes, no. I said, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just telling you, so, you know, just in case nobody ever told you, feel free to pay me for 50% of the roof, but that means I'm getting the whole roof. And the guy goes, nobody's told me that yet. I said, yeah. I go, the carrier hasn't told you? He goes, no. I said, yeah, 25%, you know, is by code. 25% is damage. You got to replace the whole thing. The guy goes to me, he goes, those sons of bitches. I get paid based on the estimate number. He goes, he literally started, he goes, I think of about 10 estimates that I should have paid the entire roof. My fee would have been an extra like $1,000 per file.
Right.
And he was like, those sons of bitches.
Right.
And he was grateful that I told him. I was like, I wasn't a jerk about it. But he was like, the damn carrier didn't even tell me that. And I said, well, now you know why.
Yeah, I would total roofs before I even got out of the truck. I'd walk up and see how, you know, a portion of the roof missing. I'm like, well, that's the front slope that's gone. So
There's only 4, so.
well, in
Wait,
in
so on
Florida,
that-
there's only 2. In
Yeah.
Florida, you got a front slope and a rear slope. I mean, because they have just a ton of straight gable roofs out there.
Yeah.
Lots
the
and lots and lots
most
of
them
them.
we have for that, just straight gable roofs.
And
So
so
on
I'm-
that claim, you started saying something. They have
Well-
paid 3 of the 4.
they paid for 3 of the 4. And so I went and sat down. I was like, okay, so you paid for, and as it was laid out in their estimate was the front slope, the right slope, the left slope, and left off the rear slope. So I pulled up the Eagle View that they in their revision said per the Eagle View report, they referred to carrier guidelines. And as a PA, now I'm not a PA in this particular claim, but I'm sitting here and I'm chuckling to myself what a PA would do to this person.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? And so I'm
Yeah.
like, I could beat them. I can have this conversation at the contractor level. I'll be okay. And so I'm going to handle it at the contractor level. But the really interesting thing is I went and looked at all of the north facing slopes, which is essentially what they left out. Well, that's only 13 squares. And they
Okay.
didn't pay for 30 squares. So I'm curious which other slopes, you know, that you're not, because we've determined that the cardinal directions of the south, the east, and the west are to be replaced. Well, you've only got 13 squares. So what's going on
Where's
here?
the rest of it? Yeah.
Yeah, where's the rest of it? So that's number
Mhm.
1. Number 2 is it's a 2-story roof. You wrote for 13 squares of 2-story. You didn't write the whole thing. It was just the 2-story portion. And this was an interesting roof plan, but essentially has 13 squares. That's a completely separate section. And by separate section, I mean, it does not tie into the lower portion of the roof. So it's like a house built right on top of a house is kind of what it is. It doesn't tie in. So there's no 1-story access, but you said our ladder now report reveals that it's only a 1-story. And I'm like, and then there's shingles on the barn. Do you remember the barn?
I do.
Well, if you look at the Eagle View,
It's a metal roof.
it's a metal roof. Now, we weren't arguing it, and you left the estimate alone with shingles. It's fine. But as I'm going to go tear this apart, her opportunity to pay my estimate in full has now sailed. So, because now this estimate is really going to go up, and I'm going to use her guidelines and her reports against her. So basically, the ladder now report you're using is shit, because it's been found to be fallible on multiple planes. So we can't use that anymore. So now you're stuck using, and I'm curious to see if she's going to try to go through the reinspection process.
That's probably
Let us-
what she'll do.
Let us go
That's-
take a look at it again. But in Texas, we have a little something called detrimental reliance. You've already extended coverage.
Right. Down here too. Yeah. I mean, once the coverage has been extended, they're on the hook, right?
You're
So-
on the hook. You've extended coverage. So we're going to get this right. So instead of paying $400 or $500 a square for the barn, you're going to pay $1,000. And that's what it's going to be by the time I'm done. You know,
Like this was the cheapest it's ever gonna get.
this is the cheap. Yeah, that was your
That's right. We
opportunity.
had that conversation the other day. This is
That
the
was-
cheapest it's ever going to get.
That was my negotiated number. Now you want to start throwing a bunch of guidelines at me, and never mind the fact that the homeowner nor the contractor of anybody that's been involved in this claim has had a set of guidelines that you're referring to, except for you. How is that fair?
Yeah, and even their guidelines, those same guidelines are the ones that tell us to detach and reset baseboards. So I really don't know how accurate those guidelines are.
Well, and the funny thing is they're guidelines.
Right.
If they were set in stone, they would be policy. And
Well,
she
they
did
called it
refer
policy.
She
She
did
said
refer
per
to it.
policy.
She called it per
Policy
insert
guidelines.
carrier
Yeah.
policy, per
Yeah.
carrier policy. It's like, as long as we're bringing up policy, since you brought up policy, I would like to talk about a very specific policy that I know that you guys have endorsed. And in fact, and collected premium on this particular policy, since you bring it up, because if
But
they
this is
bring it
supplement,
up
so we can't
in
even.
Texas, if they bring it up, I can argue it.
Right.
I can't bring it up, but if they bring it up, I can
If
make
they
an
open the
argument,
door,
at least to my
you're allowed to do it in
understanding.
cross. sort of
And we
speak.
don't, she said policy. I don't know if she's talking about guidelines or policy, but I heard the word policy. So
And again, you used a dirty word, and I'm, you can't say policy. Those are things that you can't. And so we get into all of this vernacular, and it's like, I can teach you the rules of the language. I can teach you the rules of it, but vocabulary's on you. For as much as I can it's also situational and conceptual that I can't give you this hard and fast guideline any more than they can, even though they try to say, like, I loved it. Farmers told me one time, it's like, we don't include haul off in the line item. We estimate for it simple. That's just the way we do it here. And I told him, well, Mr. Adjuster, with all due respect, you don't do anything.
It's funny because there are bad words in the claims industry. It's just the reality of it, right? And one of the bad words that a lot of people have to get out of their mouth, well, it needs to match, or there's matching.
Oh, match is a dirty
Match.
word.
And it's such a
No.
bad word, and it's, I had one not too long ago where I was the appraiser and we were arguing over laminate floors. And there was a couple claims. So both sides agreed. We went to the umpire, the arbitrator, and we're sitting there, and the opposing appraiser goes, well, I'd like to the rest of the floors that weren't damaged, I'd like it to delineated on the award that those are being put in for matching. And I adamantly disagreed. I said, absolutely not. Those floors aren't being included because of matching. And he goes, well, why are they being included? Then they shouldn't be on the award. I said, no. The snap lock floors, the installation process to remove those and reinstall them. Once I start removing the affected floors, the continuation of that snap product, when I take it out, I can't put it back in. So it's because of the installation that the continuous floors are being included, not for matching purposes. This has absolutely nothing to do with matching.
Right.
The umpire agreed with me that it had to do with a functionality of installation, because I knew that the minute that they saw matching on it, the carrier was going to eliminate that.
We don't cover
What was
matching.
on the appraisal award by the umpire, they were going to take out that extra $10,000 or $20,000 because they were going to say, we don't pay for matching. There's matching exclusions on the policy.
Well, yeah, but I ain't worried about matching.
Right. So I was like, and I've told that to people. I don't, that's one of those insurance bad words.
Those words.
You don't say matching. It's because of installation processes or this or that, or manufacturer warranties. The manufacturer will not warranty the new installation unless it's done this way. And it has nothing to do with matching.
We need to
as
talk
it
about the
pertains-
7 bad words.
Claim seven dirty
the
words.
7
of
bad
claims.
words.
Seven
Yeah.
dirty- seven dirty words
We'll
and
do
claims.
another one. We'll do another one with
And
that.
actually, that sounds like a fun podcast. I
The
go back
7
to that.
dirty words of
Yeah.
claims handling. Yeah, mold. We could get into mold. It's mold.
Flood.
I mean, people love mold, especially when it's black mold. And it's like, look,
All mold is black.
and
All mold.
I'll tell people this all the time. It's like, remember, not everything is mold. Sometimes it's just good old fashioned North American mildew that you take all your clothes off in and play in every day. You know what I mean? When you get in the shower. So,
And I tell people mold all the time. I said, you do realize mold on your policy is a secondary coverage. And in order for the mold to be afforded, what caused the mold is actually something that has to be covered.
Yeah.
I go, so
It's gotta
just
be
telling the
covered
insurance
peril.
company, I have mold, doesn't mean
Yeah.
you have an actual claim. You
Because they're
better-
going to say we don't cover mold, but you
Right.
do when this happened.
if it happens because of something that was covered on your policy, right?
Yeah.
So I tell people, oh, I have mold. Well, what happened? Oh, it's been leaking for 6 months. That's probably not what you want to tell the insurance
Yeah.
company.
Or
Right,
rot.
right.
Don't say rot.
Oh, rot
Don't ever
all
say
the time.
rot.
Yeah, my this is rotted out. Yeah. No, that's not a good word to use, people.
Yeah. It's
Man,
called a
that
nailable
would be,
surface.
Donna, write that down. The 7 dirty words of claims. We've
Yeah.
got to do that. And I think I'm going to get Mario to do it with me just for
Yes.
fun. I think the 7 dirty words of claims.
Listen.
We will dig into that. We're almost out of time here, man. And we've actually gone about 30 minutes over, believe it or not, but
Sorry, I didn't mean, I mean, you and I just like to talk. So I get it.
gosh,
I had fun just being
I
involved.
could do this. I could really do this all day, but I do want to hit one last thing before we end it. And I want to talk a little bit about the appraisal efforts that you have been involved in, because you're on umpires list. You fight both sides. You'll fight for the carrier. You'll fight. I mean, and I think you fight for the right side is what I think you do. I think when you have Mario that's involved, is somebody that's truly a conscientious estimator that has the goal to indemnify the client. And I think that's, I mean, first of all, Mario, thank you for providing that service to the number of people that you've provided it to. I do appreciate your steady voice and your steady hand when it comes to those sorts of situations, because remember, simply splitting the baby, all it does is give you an injured baby. It doesn't solve any real problems.
Yeah,
So
and splitting the baby when somebody wrote a ridiculous number isn't, something that's justifiable either, right? Because then you're actually paying for something. And look, at the end of the day, appraisal, umpires, the job is to protect the homeowner, have them compensated properly so they can rebuild after something happens in their home that's actually covered. And two, you need to protect the carrier too, to a certain extent. There's a lot of times that things get put in that make no sense whatsoever. I was just an umpire on a file last week, and the PA wrote the replacement of all the floors throughout the house. The floors weren't damaged. And the baseboards got damaged, and there were tile baseboards. Yeah, but they're not the same as the tile floors. And I kept trying to give him an out.
Mhm.
Are they damaged anywhere else? Did you see the floors in another section get damaged? And I said, just because one thing is damaged doesn't mean the other thing is damaged. And I think at the end of the day, as an appraiser, or as an umpire, as anybody that's involved in the claim process, what your goal should always be is making sure that you equally protect all the parties involved and equally do the right thing, mainly for the homeowner,
Mhm.
because they're the ones that are affected. I mean, I know we look at the insurance company as the big bad insurance company, and I get it. They underpay claims left and right. If they didn't, I wouldn't have a job, right? I've been doing this for 15 years, thanks to their
Yeah, people keep telling
willingness
us
to
that.
not do the right thing at times. They don't have guys like Jeremy on a regular basis wanting to do the right things for the homeowners. But just do what's right. If you're doing what's right on these claims, it all works out. You get more business, whether it is that you're representing the individual homeowner or someone like myself that I mainly work for other public adjusters, and I represent the homeowners on their behalf. I regularly get other PAs that are calling me saying, hey, I need help with this file. I don't know how many times I'll answer my phone and just have a conversation with the PA and help him when it's a newer guy in the industry saying, look, here's what you need to do. Or I'll have guys that call me saying, hey, they wouldn't agree to my umpire list, but here's who they gave me back. Is there anybody on this list that it's a good umpire? And I try to help these guys out as much as I can, because you're trying to do the right thing for the homeowner.
Mhm. And you get to sleep at night. That's always good.
Well, not really. I got a 4-month-old. I'm not sleeping much.
Well, as much
Speaking
as you possibly can.
Speaking of sleeping at night with a 4-month-old, so something happened to your wife. Did she get spider bit? What happened to her
Spider
finger?
woman? Yeah, my wife was bit by a brown recluse spider, and she came within like a day of almost losing her finger.
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't remember. Did I text you the picture of it?
Oh gosh, yes.
I didn't see it. I didn't look at it.
Okay,
Let's not
it-
bring that up. I am going to save our viewership from that. That was
Yeah,
one
be
nasty
glad
look.
there's no-
Message
glad-
Mario if you really want to see.
Yeah, be glad there's no screen sharing for that right now, because it was. So yeah, it's been an interesting couple months at the Rios
So
household.
how's she enjoying her new powers?
It's great. She knows that every time I do something wrong now, her spidey senses are working
Awesome.
even better.
She can tell when the baby's about to cry.
That's right. I think the baby's diaper needs to be changed in 10 minutes. You should make yourself available for that.
Well, I know that you must have a really full plate, obviously, with just the estimates that you're cranking out on a weekly basis. You got a 4-month-old at home. You know, you're constantly working.
And you're babysitting other adjusters and making sure that they're that they're doing the right thing.
Sometimes you ain't kidding. That's really is sometimes.
Well, from the bottom of our heart, thank you so much for doing what you do and the guidance that you provide. For those of you who don't know, Mario is a group expert on the Commercial Claims Advocate group on Facebook. So if you're in that group, you can always hit him up with some questions. Mario's pretty hard to get a hold of. Again, the name of his company is Claim Preparation Experts. His name, Mario Rios, estimator extraordinaire, and I highly recommend it. If you're having a tough time learning how to estimate, get Mario to do 1 or 2, and then just replicate what he does. And when you have that kind of down pat, then you can turn it back over to Mario. But it's like he said, it's important that you know how to do it. You should fully understand it. That way, you know the language and the processes that are going on in any kind of claim. But Mario, thank you so much for coming on and
Hey, there's a class coming up,
entertaining us
right?
with the pain of the claim. What's
Is
that?
there's a class coming up, right? That you're
Yeah, May 25th and 26th.
25th.
We've got
Have they filled that class yet?
not yet. I think there's a couple slots that are still open.
Man,
it's
those are
posted
gonna.
on the day.
If you're
They'll fill it up. I would assume.
Yeah, well, it's very limited. So I think they've only got
20
like 20
people, I think.
slots total is
Yep.
what they've got available. And I know it's over half full at this point in time.
It
If
is.
you're a new PA or if you're thinking about being a PA before you try to go be a PA, I recommend this course. It's 2 days out of your time. The first day is all about claim process and how to get that process into a workflow so that you can run it through the machine. And then second is nothing but experts. He's got lawyers, he's got estimators, he's got mitigation people. Get this, he's also got social media people that you're going to be talking to that are going to help you get your name out there and how to get business. Mario is one of those experts. That's where I met him when I personally took the class. And I said this actually in an interview with Vince, that class tripled my income. I'll show you my tax returns. It absolutely
I believe
tripled
it.
my income. So, you know, just being able to handle it in a timely fashion. You want to take this class, even if you think you're an experienced PA, there's a lot of new stuff that's out there. And Mario, thank you always for bringing your insight and just laying it out there like the truth that it is. So I really appreciate everything that you do for us. Again, I repeat myself a lot, as most people can tell. But this has been the Pain of the Claim podcast, where we hand out prescription strength claim relief on a daily basis. Please click like or subscribe. If you have, if you'd like to get a hold of Mario, again, his company's name is Claim Preparation Experts. And if you want to get a hold of him, just leave me a message in the comments and we will make sure we get you in contact with him. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will see you down the road.